The line to get into the courtroom today started forming last night. People camped out with sleeping bags and pillows. One woman told the New York Times she had paid $750 for someone to hold a space in line for her. Another man reportedly sold his spot in line for $2,000. But as much as seats inside the courtroom today were the hottest ticket in town, the real circus today was outside the courtroom, where first Republican Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and then a gaggle of Trump's vice presidential hopefuls all held press conferences defending Trump, attacking the trial, and counter-programming what was going on inside that courtroom. Joining us now is Michelle Goldberg, opinion columnist at the New York Times, and Andrew Rice, contributing editor at New York Magazine. Michelle and Andrew, thank you for joining us as we dissect exactly what happened. I just wonder, Michelle, if you have thoughts on what the group text was like as they all coordinated their outfits. Vivek Ramaswamy, Doug Burgum,
and they must
Byron
have been
Donalds.
disappointed that Trump, I think, had a yellow tie.
I know. He didn't get the memo.
They got the wrong message. I mean, the thing that I was actually glad that they were all in the courtroom today. I mean, I wonder if at any point they had a flicker of recognition that this was a trial, this was a day in the trial that was all about what excessive loyalty to Donald Trump gets you. I mean, I just felt like they were, kind of looking at the ghost of Christmas.
A sense of irony?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if maybe some of them are capable of it, but I just wonder if it ever, there was a point at the very end of his testimony when Michael Cohen talked about his regrets and how he had, his out of loyalty to Donald Trump, he had betrayed his own moral compass and at great cost to himself and his family. And I wonder if there was even like a flicker in Mike Johnson's mind about kind of what he was doing at that very moment.
I don't know. I don't know if anybody knows the answer to that, including Mike Johnson. Andrew, I was struck by the fact, I thought, to Michelle's point, it was very apropos that these individuals showed up today, because in Trump's mind, this is all politics, right? This is auditioning. Mm-hmm. This is a Veep stakes audition. This is about how he can milk this for campaign contributions. This is about what it does to his standing as the Republican frontrunner. And in your piece for New York Magazine, you write, before coming into court in the morning, this was yesterday, Trump had waved the Times story accompanying this poll that shows him up ahead in front of reporters in the hallway, saying, "It shows us leading everywhere by a lot. Let the star witness testify," Trump seemed to be saying. He was winning where it mattered. Do you think today did anything to disabuse him of the idea that he's winning?
I doubt it. I mean, I think that the interesting thing that's going on in the courtroom is you see these people, as you say, kind of coming in to almost sort of pay homage to Trump, sitting quietly and listening to this incredibly damning testimony and drawing conclusions that are maybe quite different than what the jury is drawing. But the most interesting thing I thought about Mike Johnson was that, and it's probably mentioned by others, but he didn't even come into the courtroom. Yeah. He just was in there for a minute, and he came out and decried the witch hunt that was going on inside.
He didn't put his time in on that bench.
He didn't get there. He didn't check his cell phone.
There's also another aspect to this, which is, of course, I found it both sort of thuggish and pathetic in equal measure. But there's another aspect to this, which is that Donald Trump has a gag order.
Yes.
The gag order prohibits him from making certain statements. He wants to still make those statements. So he is getting other people who are not subject to the gag order to come and make those statements. And it really is the equivalent of, like, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you. It really is that every day, because they come out and they say things that are obviously, I'm not saying like literally copied and pasted from him or given directly, but people know what Donald Trump wants to hear. They parrot the lines of attack, specifically lines of attack that are things that he cannot say.
Well, and specifically lines of attack directed at the judge's daughter,
correct,
which is a hobby horse of Donald Trump's. We have a little bit of that sound. Let's play it.
The judge inside, his daughter is making millions of dollars running against Donald Trump, raising money for Donald Trump's political opponents.
You've got relatives of the judge that are benefiting financially.
The only thing that's being done wrong is by this judge. His daughter's making money, raising money for Democrats.
The real bookkeeping that we need accounting of is Judge Merchan's own family member collecting millions of dollars as a Democratic operative.
The judge's own daughter is making millions of dollars doing online fundraising for Democrats. They're using this trial as a hook. It's so corrupt. It's so corrupt, and everybody knows it.
mean? Mike, are you wearing the red tie? Yeah, Vivek, I'm wearing the red tie. You got the note about the judge's daughter? I got it, Doug. Byron, you got it? I mean, it is not, they're not even trying to hide what they're doing here.
In court yesterday, actually, I was sitting close enough that I could actually look over Trump's shoulder and see what he was reading. At one point, he was actually reading the quotes that these individuals were, and going through and making notations with a pen on the paper.
Before or after?
While testimony was going on, while Michael Cohen was testifying against him, he was actually going through and annotating and editing the quotes that these people were going to say.
I mean, in addition to being utterly humiliating and transparent, there's also a real question about whether this is legal. Part of the gag order, Michelle, is that you cannot direct others to violate the gag order for you, which is clearly what's happening here.
Right. I mean, it's sort of like he gets hit for retweeting. So instead of retweeting, he just gets the people to come in and
human
actually...
retweets. They're human retweets. That's exactly what they are.
And I mean, and Tommy Tuberville was out there saying, "I am here to help and fight." Right? I'm breaking the gag order. I'm trying to get around the gag order. And I don't even know if there is a body of law that addresses this, because it seems like so outside the norm.
There is, it is, and I'm no legal expert, it is difficult to prove, and it's also like, what leverage does Judge Merchan have over Byron Donalds and, you know, Vivek Ramaswamy? But you would think, in the context of a criminal trial, perhaps, Chris, individuals would be, I don't know, less trepidatious about breaking the law.
Well, I think there's a sort of like testing the limit ethos that has taken over the own party. But the other thing about it is, I thought it was so interesting today. They all said the same thing, which is that I'm here as a friend. They clearly have been all told to say I'm here as a friend. And what's interesting about that is that he doesn't have friends, right? Because his friends, Vivek Ramaswamy, I mean, Rachel made this point the previous hour, but put yourself in the position that you find yourself, you are facing criminal trial in New York court. Like, I would hope that my friends and family would be there to support me. I think it would be terrifying. I think it would be a very vulnerable moment, and it would mean a lot to me to have my actual friends and family. He doesn't have that there. Eric and Lara Trump were there today. Those are actual members of his family. But by and large, there has not been family. And I don't think the man has friends in the way that we understand it. And so instead, this weird simulacrum of friendship is being provided by vanquished primary contestants whose voices, boy, did I miss that voice of Vivek Ramaswamy. Wow, so soothing to hear that the microphone again. Like, that's what he has instead.
I mean, but there is the reality, though, that this is a show for two different audiences, right? There's the legal audience, and then there's, to some degree, the right-wing echo chamber. And I do wonder, Michelle, the utility of having this parade of contestants show up and say the same thing about the judge being corrupt and his daughter being corrupt.
Yeah. Right. I think the jury, right? I mean, I think at one point Tommy Tuberville said the jury, if they are Americans.
Yes, just throw in
presumably citizens. Is what he called them.
Just throw in illegal migration just for good measure to stoke the ire of the base. It isn't. I mean, regardless of the fact that it's not based in fact, the repetition over and over and over again has worked for Trump in the past.
Well, right, and I think it's a prophylactic against if he gets a guilty verdict.
Correct.
To kind of invalidate it in the minds of his followers and maybe the kind of people who told pollsters that it would matter to them if a presidential candidate was convicted of a felony. And so it's a way to sort of neutralize that and maybe even turn it into an advantage among people who either like Donald Trump's gangster persona or see him as a kind of martyr for their particular grievances.
And in the meantime, the guys that auditioned today, Andrew, did any of them strike you as particularly more effective than others?
I mean, from within the courtroom, none of them struck me as anything because they're really just potted plants sitting there and listening to the
playing
testimony.
On their phone.
Occasionally playing on their phone.
Which
Jimmy
we can't
Vance
do.
was live tweeting while it was going on, but really, it's a kind of ultimate show of loyalty to sit through this at times quite stultifyingly boring testimony about checks and so on, and to spend your entire day doing that and then go out and deliver a speech. These are all, with the exception of Ramaswamy, these are all elected office holders who presumably have other things that they could be doing to serve the American people.
Ramaswamy is a little unclear, but the other ones do have jobs, as last I checked.
Speaker of the House maybe has some things to do, maybe. Michelle Goldberg and Andrew Rice, thank you so much for your time and thoughts tonight, guys. Really appreciate it.